All right, and welcome back to another Falcons Fanatic podcast. I'm your host, as always, Lucky Roberts. As the Falcons win over the Las Vegas Raiders, 15-9, and a 15-9 looks like an unappealing score. It's because it was an unappealing game. As the Falcons, win by field goal, death by field goal, sort of similar to that Steelers game we had earlier. Although the Falcons are on the winning side of this one. But it was just not pretty at all in any facet. The defense looked pretty strong, but you have to keep in mind, we are playing against Desmond Ridder, so the defense is going to look good against any team that he plays. And the offense was just so putrid. Obviously, the running game worked, and so I think that's what they're going to talk about in the pressers. Is they're going to say, well, the running game was working, and when you're up, you're going to run the football, and I understand that, but it just showed such a disbelief in Kirk Cousins' abilities to run this football team, and a disbelief in his ability to throw the football in general. Because there was many opportunities when we are on a 3rd and 4, a 3rd and 5, and this is the spot where you trust your quarterback to get you that first down to win you the game. And there was a couple times we did give him the ball to throw, and it didn't work. And that's the craziest part is I don't even think Raheem Morris made the wrong decision, but I think the cat is out of the bag at this point. It's very clear we're just going to put Kirk Cousins here as a puppet, and we're just going to have him do what we need to do, and we're just trying to buy as many weeks as possible with him as our puppet king as in the quarterback room so that we don't completely ruin this team and completely ruin the chemistry on this team, because I think that would happen if you put in Michael Penix right now, and everybody would be asking questions and it would become a whole thing, and Kirk Cousins needs to be our quarterback this season, and I understand that, but how many weeks can you buy? You can buy a week against the Raiders. The Raiders are begging for you to beat them. They're starting Desmond Ridder. That's all you need to say. They rushed it 4 times with Alexander Madison. Sorry, 7 times with Alexander Madison for 3 yards a carry, 3 times with Amir Abdullah, 2.7 a carry, and then Sincere McCormick, 7 carries, 8 yards. Just horrendous. And then Ridder throwing the football. Look, he can throw a check down. I don't know. There's a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL who can throw a check down, but if you're asking him to throw anything other than a check down, hold on to your hat, because that football's going anywhere but the receiver's hands. And a rating of 60 for Ridder, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He looks even. It's very similar to last year. He seems decently, average outside of the pocket. Inside of the pocket, he's a spaz. He's a mess. He doesn't know what he's doing, and he's very similar to Kirk Cousins in that way right now. When he's being pressured in the pocket, you don't know what's going to happen. The difference is Ridder's like that in the pocket all the time. Every single second he's in that pocket, you don't know what he's going to do unless it's pre-snap. Okay, predetermined, I'm going to throw this football. Kirk Cousins can read a defense, but if you put a guy in front of him, that's when he becomes Desmond Ridder. And he can't run out of the pocket like Desmond Ridder can and create 28 yards on 5 rushes like Ridder did. But I'd still much prefer Kirk Cousins to Desmond Ridder. Don't get me wrong, but I'd still prefer Michael Penix or anybody else we could put in there other than Kirk Cousins as well. Just because he's better than Desmond Ridder does not mean that much. But let's look at the positives. Defensively, the Atlanta Falcons were amazing. Caden Ellis was all over the place, had a couple of hurries as he always seems to do, but it wasn't only Caden Ellis getting some pressures as well. Zach Harrison got a sack, 2 sacks for D'Angelo Malone, who actually came off the edge and got a couple of pressures there with a scrambling Desmond Ridder. And we saw the interior of our defensive line also get some pressure, mainly stuffing every single run from Sincere McCormick, Amir Abdullah, and Alexander Madison, to the point where they were stuck on their own 3 back-to-back negative plays safety, which, kind of is the difference in this football game. Without that safety, it's a much closer game, and the Raiders were able to kick a field goal and maybe send this to overtime. So, very clutch safety indeed, and it allowed the Falcons to really, let's just win this game. Let's do what we have to. Let's just hand the ball off and not screw this up. And they still almost did anyway. Jesse Bates and Damone Harris with path deflection, Jesse Bates with a pick right at the end. And it was just all an amazing. This is the type of quarterback you want to play if you're Jimmy Lake and our defense, because our defense is very similar to the Dan Quinn years. We're going to keep everything in front of us. You can chunk out 4 yards, 3 yards if you want, but Desmond Ridder is not the guy to read a defense, pick apart a defense, and chunk out yards. So he's making incompletions. He's making, bad plays. And if you're going to run it, thankfully today, we stopped him, which has been a really big issue for the Falcons so far this season, even though that's supposed to be our strength is the interior of our defensive line. But we stopped him today, and if we can stop him in the run, then keeping everything in front of us makes a lot more sense. And especially against a quarterback like this, who's not going to pick you apart, you're going to do great. If you run into a Geno Smith, if you run into Sam Darnold, that's going to, make a big difference. But for the Falcons, allowing Desmond Ridder to sit back in the pocket and try to find an open receiver or get sacked really, really worked out for us. Nate Landman was amazing for us as well. And the interior of this defensive line, really, really impressed with that. We saw Contavious Street get in there with some nice plays. He had 3 TFLs in this one. Zach Harrison also swung in there a couple of times, 2 TFLs for him. Grady Jarrett as well, always showing up. Rook even got one. Rook joining the party with a TFL, and you love to see it. Off the edge, still looking for something. Maybe that can be D'Angelo Malone. Finally, somebody developing on the edge. We'll have to see and wait, because we got nothing from Arnold Ebiketie. We got nothing from Matthew Judon once again. In the pass defense side of it, we're good. We can cover, especially when their receivers are Jacoby Myers and Amir Abdullah. Brock Bowers we held pretty well. We have our speedy linebackers who are able to do just enough, and even a couple of good plays there in the slot. We saw not only D. Alford force a fumble, but he also had a couple of pass deflections covering Brock Bowers, and Brock Bowers was contained, and Jacoby Myers and Amir Abdullah got 50 yards each, and I can't believe A.J. Terrell let them do that. And there's a couple of plays where you're thinking, come on, A.J. Really, it's just an out route. It's just a stop. It's just a hook, just a curl. I know you can cover a curl, just be a little more handsy, a little more stick to him a little bit more. It's Jacoby Myers, but you just don't see that from A.J. Terrell. But what you did see was some big hits, which stuck the Raiders in deep. And the Falcons did that a lot on special teams, and that's going to seamlessly transition to the real all-stars of this game, because realistically, if you're watching defensively, you have the turnovers. Sure, those are good plays to watch, a couple sacks, whatever, but nobody really watches the NFL for some good defense. And offensively, the Falcons were a lot of short handoffs, a lot of handoffs. Bijan with a 30-yard rush, which was pretty entertaining. But other than that, you had the 30-yard bomb to Drake London with the further touchdown and nothing else offensively. But what you did have was special teams. And you had our good old friend who seems to show up in all the little places, and I'm so happy that he's still on this team and that he's bringing it every single down. It's Kadarrell Hodge, and I'm happy he had another good game, a game where he could stand out today, where he blocked not only the first punt, but a second punt against the Las Vegas Raiders, one where I don't know who it was on the team, but there was 2 guys, had a clear runway to the end zone, try to pick it up and just kicking it around, fumbling it around. I don't know what they did with their hands, but they lost them, I guess, and allowed the Raiders to pick it up and almost run it right back for the first down, which would have been insane. But no, 2 blocks, and both led to points for the Atlanta Falcons, which were essential in this game. And we also got another block from Kevin King on an extra point. Didn't really make much of a difference, as it changed the game from being a 5-point game to a 6-point game. Still a touchdown game either way. But special teams, really liked what I saw from Bradley Pinion, pinning the Raiders in, twice with some really nice punts, a 63-yard long punt, multiple times inside the 10, 3 times inside the 10 for the Las Vegas Raiders, really stifling what they are able to do on offense. Younghoe Koo doing really well until he missed another field goal, and I think it's time to hang up the Koo jerseys. I think it's time. I think we need to look for a new kicker because there's just no trust for Younghoe Koo either. And you can see it with both Koo, and you can see it with Kirk Cousins as well. There's many times where the Falcons are in 50 to 55-yard range, and we're playing it safe. And the commentators called it perfectly today. We're playing not to lose. We're not playing to win. And we're playing that specifically around Kirk Cousins, and we're playing around specifically Younghoe Koo outside of 50 yards. And even within 50 yards, he's still not as accurate as he used to be. And there's so many young kickers coming up who are practicing, every single day. Not like when Koo was coming up and they were just showed up once a day and just kick it and you're done for the day. But, real professional kickers who don't miss 50-plus yarders. And we need to get one of those because those are the differences in these games. And it was almost the difference in this game because Koo missed one of those field goals. But Falcons hold on either way because it's Desmond Ridder, right? Like that's who we're, let's not kid ourselves. That's who we're playing. And Desmond Ridder with no backfield, no offensive line, and Brock Bowers only on offense. And I thought it was a well commentated game for being such a boring one. And I thought they did a good job of talking about the big picture for both the Falcons and the Raiders, and also not sticking particularly on the Falcons or the Raiders throughout the game, and really explaining, hey, the Raiders are rebuilding. Is this the coach that we want to have with them? Is, which way are we looking for quarterback? You got to get the right quarterback head coach to really be a successful team in this league. And for the Falcons, they were more talking about when is it time to switch out of Kirk Cousins, Younghoe Koo, why are they not trusting him in these spots? And really looked into the future of this season. And when you look into the future of this season, it's not impossible. They did something at the beginning of this game where it was a playoff chance. And I think it was Falcons are sitting at around 20%, maybe a little bit less than that before this game. And with a win here, we bump up to like 23% of making the playoffs. Basically, it goes as follows. Tampa Bay's last 3 games and them winning over the Chargers really does not help the Falcons' case here. But they play the Cowboys, the Panthers, and the Saints. If the Buccaneers win all 3, the Falcons are out of the playoffs. There's not really any wild card opportunities here for the Falcons to sneak up on. You have the Commanders 9-5. You have both the Seahawks and I think it's the Cardinals. Let me just quickly open up my standings here. The Seahawks and the Cardinals also at 7-7, who are in pole position compared to the Falcons to take that the 7th spot. The Commanders are currently in that 7th spot at 9-5, and then you have the Seahawks and Rams at 8-6. But if the Buccaneers do drop a game against the Cowboys, Panthers, or Saints, which I think they will, I don't see a world where they win 7 straight games to get into the playoffs. But once again, I wouldn't put it past the Falcons, and I wouldn't put it past the Buccaneers to somehow, the Falcons somehow to screw this up and the Buccaneers to somehow clutch it up. But one of these 3 games, I do think they drop. And so the Falcons need to win out because they're not going to lose 2 out of these 3. The Falcons need to beat the Giants, they need to beat the Commanders, and they need to beat the Panthers. Giants-Panthers, I think you could do a similar performance to today and get by. I am not really worried about that. The Commanders game is huge on the 29th in Washington. Just a huge matchup And obviously, what the Commanders are heavily favored. They have all their players up and healthy. Jaden Daniels, obviously, the other Robinson running back, Terry McLaurin, and so that's what it is for the Falcons. It's very much in their hands, but if I'm looking at the performance in this game, which I think was worse than the performance against the Chargers, worse again in the performance against the Saints, you have to really look at yourself and say, what is the trajectory of this team? And I just don't see it happening. I don't see us making the playoffs this year. I think we go 9-8 and miss the playoffs this year. It'll be a winning record for the first time in 6 years, but without that postseason that we all are craving in Atlanta. Obviously, if we do beat the Commanders, I do think the Buccaneers will drop one of these games, and I think the Falcons have a shot. But other than that, it's looking quite bleak for the Falcons. Technically, our destiny is still semi in our control, but we need a little bit of help from the Buccaneers, and we need a little bit of help from our own team in winning these next 3 games. It's not impossible, but it's just looking so unlikely, especially when you're not playing the worst team in the league in the Las Vegas Raiders. Anyway, I'll see you guys next week as we play one of the other worst teams in the league, the New York Giants. That one's on the 22nd, 1 p.m. Fox on Sunday. So up and early for that one, and should be an easy win with, looks like Drew Lock as their starting quarterback. Another 2-win team. Should be an easy win for the Falcons. And the Commanders the next week. That'll be the true test. But thank you for watching and for listening. I've been your host, Lucky Roberts. This is the Falcons Fanatic Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter if you like at Lucky Roberts. I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to force you either. It's your own damn life. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. And hopefully another win and hopefully a loss in Tampa Bay. The Tampa Bay game is probably more important than the Falcons if we're looking at the Falcons playoffs. But anyway, I'll see you guys next week.